Welcome back to the Lawn Hustle Podcast. If you are in the green industry and ready to take your lawn care business to the next level, you're in the right place. I am your host, Andy Wilson, with 16 years of experience in the field. Each week we dive into strategies, stories, and secrets to help you build a legit, thriving lawn care business. Whether you're starting or ready to scale, this is your space to learn, to grow, and to hustle smarter. Now let's get to work. In today's episode, we have Joey Coberly, the Landscaping Bookkeeper. Joey, thank you for joining the Lawn Hustle.
Hey, Andy, appreciate you for having me on.
Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background in bookkeeping?
Yeah, so I got into bookkeeping about 6 years ago. Prior to that, I went to school for business management. I got my bachelor's in that. During school, I did a lot of manual labor, so I did a lot of blue-collar work. I was a industrial wind turbine technician. I did that for about 4 or 5 years. I did some tile work. Window and door installation. So I've worked a lot of small businesses. I've worked at big business level too. When I did the wind turbines, I was working at General Electric. So that's a multi-billion-dollar company, obviously. And then just some little jobs I was working my way through college, like Subway. I did that when I was 18, 19. But for the most part, I've done, blue-collar type of work. So that's kind of my background, and mixed with finance. So I thought that was kind of a unique position to be in. Most people that have been in finance have only held, office jobs or something like that.
Well, I see you on Instagram, and a lot of the individuals or businesses that I follow, you follow. And some of the friends that I have on social media, you are their bookkeeper. So what made you specialize in bookkeeping for small businesses?
So me and my wife actually started the business in 2018. I was still working full-time as she got it started. We decided on bookkeeping because it's remote, and we wanted to spend time with our family. As we had kids, we wanted to be home, because a lot of times, my mom or dad were away when I was growing up. And so I really wanted to be, me and Megan, to have maximum time with them. So that was the main thing. And another thing was we were both working, and so we would come home and we were too tired to communicate with each other. And I know communication is like the key to any relationship. So just being too tired when we came home, that was a big reason to start it. We wanted to work together. I know a lot of couples say they don't want to work together, but we're not that couple. We like to have common goals and do things, in tandem with each other. So that was another one. And then we both like numbers. My wife was a math teacher. Megan, I'm sure you've heard of her. She was a high school math teacher, and so we both like numbers. I'd done investing on the side since 2009. While I was working my way through, going to college and doing my jobs I was telling you about. So I like numbers as well. So really, it was a love of numbers, flexibility and schedule, and the ability to raise a family with this type of work and all be together.
Well, my wife and I have been married for 35 years. So I agree that communication is the key.
Yeah.
Last night I done an Instagram live show, and we talked about 5 ways to increase your profit. Number 1 is to raise your prices. Number 2 was to optimize your route or route density. Number 3, we talked about upselling your customers. Number 4, we talked about reducing your overhead. And then number 5, we talked about on focusing your ideal customer. Is there any of those 5 things that you would like to expound on today?
Yeah, sure. I'll expound on overhead.
Okay.
A lot of times when you talk about overhead, you think about just cutting expenses, but overhead is what's called a fixed cost. So it can also go down from increasing revenue per employee. And so if you get to yourself where you find that your overhead's expanding, it might not be that you need to cut overhead costs. It might be that you need to expand and get your employees maximized, and that will drop your overhead costs. So you may be freaking out because, oh, my overhead's at 50% or 45%. Really, maybe you have purchased a lot of equipment and it's not all being used yet. And so you're essentially front loading your business so it can take you to the next stage. And so you just need to make sure everything's maximal or being maximally used so that your overhead drops that way. And so I see that as a common problem. A lot of guys will say, I need to cut my overhead costs. And it's like, no, you're just ready to go to the next phase of your business. You may be ready to go from 500 to 750 or something along those lines. So I think that one, it's not talked about very often, and I like to bring it up.
What is the most common financial mistake that you see lawn care business owners making?
Not saving up enough cash in the beginning and trying to scale with no cash. See that over and over again. Usually that's how guys get into debt. And then that's also how they get into cash flow issues later on. It's not that your business is bad. It's just you never capitalized it properly. And so I think, staying small a little bit longer than usual so you can stay large as long as possible. So it's really about front loading your business with what it needs early on so that you can, especially if you have a family. That's another thing too. A lot of these guys are always, I see two types of businesses always comparing themselves to each other. I see the family businesses where you have like the man working it, the mom staying home with the kids, maybe 3 or 4 kids, and they're trying to keep up with a guy that's soloing, and that guy can take a little bit more risk in his life. He can grow faster, be away more. And for us family guys that have kids and a wife and stuff, it's hard to compare ourselves to that model because, you obviously don't want to be gone 80 hours a week, for 5-6 years. And you don't want to be taking as much risk, because a lot of times it's not good to take on as much risk when you have a family. It puts a separation between you and your wife a lot of times. I'm not saying always, but yeah. I don't know if I answered your question. I kind of got a little lost there.
I've often told people that have asked me about advice on starting lawn care, and my advice to them was don't try to get too big too quick.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you were saying there. When you try to get too big too quick, you can incur a lot of expenses, especially if you don't have a lot of upfront cash to pay cash for your equipment. And so what is the best way for a small lawn care business or a mid-sized lawn care business to track their income and their expenses effectively?
I would just say get a bookkeeper, I guess. I recommend getting one before the problems start arising. So one thing that our company does is we largely only accept small businesses because we want you to get the proper education before you're starting to be educated at 7-figure mark and you're trying to fix a lot of problems. So it's kind of like catching a big problem in your body before it's too late. So you're kind of taking precautionary measures and just familiarizing yourself with it before you get too big and the money starts going everywhere. Because once you get to 7 or 8 figures, the money is really just it's easy to just fall through the cracks, and it's hard to manage it all if you didn't have a system set in place as early as possible. So it is a little bit of an upfront investment, but obviously keeping track of your income and expenses through maybe your wife does it even. Maybe I see a lot of guys have their wife do it, but just making sure that it's all accounted for and you're keeping a monthly eye on it, especially during when you have the fluctuality of the businesses. You want to look at it through a different lens in the winter and the summer and whatnot. So,
well, can you talk a little bit about separating your personal finances from your business finances?
Yeah, we honestly don't. So one of our rules for accepting clients is a lot of times we're a little hesitant to accept companies that are constantly spending. It's very hard for us to help you if you're constantly mixing your personal and your business, because we can't look at your business in its purest form. I want to know what it's doing by itself. And if you're just going off all the time and spending money randomly on all your house costs and everything, it's very hard to get an accurate depiction of what's actually going on. So it's hard to be wise with your business when everything's just jumbled together and it's a jumbled mess. So we're always going to recommend separating the two.
Let's take a short break and hear a word from my sponsor.
Sure.
Spring is right around the corner. Are you ready to grow your lawn and landscaping business this year? If you want to stand out from the competition and attract quality leads, a professional website is the way to go. That's where Green Frog Web Design comes in. They'll create a beautiful, user-friendly website that showcases your services, highlights your best work, and helps customers find you fast. Your new website will make a lasting impression and bring in the clients that you want to attract. And here's the best part. Right now, you can get started for just $1 for the first month. It's an offer so good, even our competition started using it. This spring, grow your business. Head over to greenfrogwebdesign.com today, or just click the link in the bio and let them build the perfect website for your landscaping or lawn care company.
And welcome back to the Lawn Hustle. We have Joey Coberly, the landscaping bookkeeper, with us today. Let me ask you, what is a good profit margin for a lawn care business?
Yeah, so it's going to depend on what industry you're in terms of, do you do hardscapes? Do you do application? Do you do landscaping? Do you do maintenance? Are you a jumbled mix of bag, that sort of thing? General business practices, and I hear a lot of profit margins getting thrown about because a lot of people don't know how to accurately say what a profit margin is because they mix in their personal salary with it and say, I profited 60% last year when you're jumbling in your personal salary with the profits of the business. So you can think of profits as what's a return on your business's assets, and a salary would just be your work performed in the business. And a lot of people jumble them together, especially early on when the money that you're making is not necessarily on what's called your income statement. It's considered a draw. And so a lot of times if you look at an income statement on a small business, it's not going to have the owner's salary on there because you're not a W-2, you're not a 1099, so you're not on that statement. And so what happens is guys see these enormous profit margins, on their income statement, and they think that that's what they've actually made, when in reality, you didn't account for the work that you did in the business, which is, as you know, the labor performed, the selling, general administration, all the back end stuff too. That's, you're worth more than you think you are. You're not worth just a general day labor, is what I'm trying to say. So I think for maintenance, I'd probably say I usually shoot for 10 to 15% for maintenance. For landscape, and I'd say 15 to 20. And then if you're going to do kind of more specialized, like application or hardscaping and custom work, I'd say in the range of 20 to sometimes 30. 30 is pretty rare, but if you can get up there, it is doable at the small business level. And the bigger you get, it gets harder to be as profitable because you're competing against bigger fish, and bigger fish are going to a lot of times drive the price and the profit margins down because there is so much. There's a bigger piece of the pie that they want to capture, right? You've kind of expanded into bigger markets, and people and bigger companies have their eye on you. So, and that's why, at the really big $1 billion business level, it's extremely hard to have really, really high profit margins because there's a lot of money that those companies are going after. And so the competition gets a little tighter. So, so if you hit 15% in any industry, that's really, really good. So, and I don't know if you know who Greg Crabtree is, but he wrote the Simple Numbers, Big Profits, and he's going to be speaking at, one of his underlings is going to be speaking at Lawn Care Life they were going to on the 21st and 22nd. But in his book, he highlights that you should be trying to shoot in between 10 and 15%. And as you get to that 15% mark, starting to add more overhead so that you can scale to the next phase. And that increase in overhead is going to drop you back down to 10. And so it's a constant fluctuation between going to 10 to 15%. So yeah, I think there's going to be, and it also depends on the overall economy, like profit margins go down during tough times. It's just a general rule of thumb. So.
Well, how can a lawn care business increase their profitability?
Well, I think it all starts with knowing your customer, right? So I think you talked about that on your webinar last night. It all starts with, well, here's the problem. When you first start out, you're just kind of trying to, a lot of guys will have a 9 to 5 and they're just trying to get out of that. So they accept everything. And so the route density is bad. They have to buy a bunch of tools and equipment to service different types of jobs, and they're not very efficient. Their profit margins are usually zero, but they make enough money to make a living. And so they feel like they're winning, but then that model is very hard to scale because of how hard the training costs are, because you're doing different types of jobs all the time. Your training and your retention is going to be bad. You're going to be chasing a lot of clients that don't respect your time, a lot of the price shoppers. So you really have to nail down who you serve, and that can only be really done with experience. So you do kind of have to do the crappy years at first so you can figure out who you do want to serve and, what's your ideal customer. But I think it all starts with ideal customer. And then a lot of the stuff works its way out from there. You want to, I think niches is in the riches to a certain extent, and when you're small, it's definitely true. The bigger you get, it gets a little more, I got to expand it, add more service type of business, but just knowing who you serve and serving them well, and it's going to make your systems, your standard operating procedures a lot more simple. Your employee retention is going to stay. You're going to have more employees longer because they have more clarity in what they're doing and who they're serving. It's going to make your training better. It's going to make it reverberates through your entire business model. So the companies that go extinct are the ones that lose track of who they're trying to serve.
I have some customers that joined with me the first year I was in business, and I'm still maintaining their properties today, 16 years later.
Uh-huh.
And those sweet little old ladies are almost like a grandma to me. And I got one that's having to move out of her house because she can no longer live there by herself because of her health is failing. But maintaining customers can also, I think, increase your profits if you're able to maintain those customers and you're not losing customers because you're not doing the job that you're supposed to be doing. I like to say, when you show up, show out. And when you leave, it's the best looking property on the street.
Yes. I think customer service, what's well said, customer service is one of the best ways to have retention, and then therefore that's going to decrease what's called your rate of attrition. So as you scale, I'm sure you've probably talked about this on your show before, but as you scale, you have to have more and more leads coming in to offset the amount of customers that are coming out. And so that's called your rate of attrition. But if you can reduce that rate of attrition through good customer service, it allows you to scale more, and then you build the brand inside of that. You have more leads coming into, so it dualistically serves the growth of your company.
Well, let me ask you this, Joey. What red flags should a business owner look for as they're looking over their quarterly reports or their P&L statement at the end of the year? Is there any red flags that we should be looking for that can draw our attention to maybe set off a problem that might be occurring?
Yeah, one of my favorite things to go off of quarterly or heck even yearly is what's called your gross profit margin. I don't know if you've talked about that much, but that's basically an efficiency metric. It's going to tell you if you have a scalable business model, and if your gross margin is dipping below industry standards, it's going to be very hard for you to scale and repeat that model. So gross profit is when you take your revenue and you subtract out what's called your COGS, or your cost of goods. You need to know that you're not spending too much on your cost of goods, because that's a variable cost. It's going to go up in tandem with how much you're selling. So if you're selling something that has that you're not retaining much on every dollar, it's going to be hard to repeat that over and over again. Eventually, you're going to run out of steam and not have enough money to pay for equipment, expanding overhead costs, going through tough times. Your cash flow is going to suffer. So so cost of goods would include like your fuel costs, your material costs, and your labor cost. So if you're being inefficient in your labor, or you're driving all over the place and your fuel's too high, or you're really bad at dealing with suppliers and you don't have good relations there, you buy things inefficiently at bad times, so you're in the application business, that can be some huge red flags. And you don't want to scale a business for years with bad gross margin. You can do it temporarily, but you're going to run out of steam. If you've noticed, I don't know if you've watched Shark Tank much, but one of the first things they almost always ask is, what's your gross margin? And they're just looking to see if they have enough room to invest in the company, to see if how far this thing can scale and if it's worth their time putting, their money in to get equity out of the business. So most of the time, that's one of the first questions that they ask. And you can do the same thing with your small business.
Well, what bookkeeping software do you recommend for a lawn care business to use?
So the only thing we use is QuickBooks Online. There's some other ones like Xero and whatnot, but yeah, I think that's I don't ever even hear anybody using anything other than that these days, just QuickBooks Online. There's some few people still using QuickBooks Desktop. But yeah, for the most part, Intuit's kind of captured the market on that for now. So that's the one that we all use.
What kind of an emergency fund should a lawn care business have? When something unexpected happens, they have the funds available to take care of it, so they don't have to go in debt.
Yeah, if you look at most investors, like Kevin O'Leary will say, have 3 months business expenses saved up. A good rule of thumb is also 2 months of a month of negative cash flow. So if you had, let's say you took your rolling year and you looked at each month individually, I would say get at least whatever your negative cash flow for the month was. So say wintertime, you went down $15,000 one month, have that so that you're not digging yourself out of a hole every year. So that at the minimum, I would say use that. But a lot of times 3 months of operational expenses is a really good rule of thumb. You don't want to have too much cash because that's a lot of opportunity costs sitting there. So it's a balancing act, but I think 3 months of operating expenses is a pretty good rule of thumb.
Well, where I live, we get snow, but you can't count on snow for your revenue during the winter because you just never know. And I'm glad to see that you and your family survived the blizzard in Florida.
That was wild.
I seen your Facebook or your Instagram reels out playing in the snow, and I love the one where you were salting the street.
Yeah, one of my clients was making fun of me about that this morning. I know absolutely nothing about snow. They had to tell me what black ice was. Like I've literally seen snow once, and it was in Tennessee when I was 19. I'm 33 now. I've lived in the Southeast my whole life. I've traveled, but we've just never traveled when it's snowing anywhere, So, yeah, we were quite clueless down there. They had to send us a lot of equipment from out of state, because we don't have a lot of the snow plows and everything that other states have. So, yeah, a lot of people stuck in their houses, a lot of crashes everywhere. But, yeah, it was an interesting time to say the least.
A friend of mine took 3 plow trucks to New Orleans and plowed snow for them because they got, quite a bit.
Yeah.
But what got me on the snow topic is I have to save all spring and summer, and I try to put back 20 to 25% every month of my total revenue for the month so I can have some revenue available if we don't get snow.
Mm-hmm.
So try to prepare as if we're not going to get any. But then if we do get some, then I have additional revenue that comes in during the winter months.
Mm-hmm.
So what is one piece of financial advice that you would give someone that is just starting out in the green industry?
I would say definitely get on a personal budget and try to retain as much cash in your business as early as possible. A lot of people will think there's something wrong with their business when in reality they just haven't got their personal life straightened out. So if you're a personal spender and you're mixing that with your business, you're gonna, a lot of the growth of your business is going to succeed based on how much you've stabilized your personal life. So I think getting your personal life in order is a big one. And retaining a lot of what's called equity in your business early on so that you can scale with it, because growth sucks cash. And then, in the beginning, just hustle and get experience. Put yourself in a lot of different situations, figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. You're not going to do it perfect the first and second year, but I think experience is extremely underrated, especially in, for people that are working 9 to 5s. They're thinking they're not making a lot of money when they first start off in life, starting in college, getting out of college or high school. But, those people that you meet and learning to interact with different types of people in different situations can get you really, really far in life. Your ability to adapt and meet people where they're at and that sort of thing. So I would say those 3 things.
Well, how can our listeners get in touch with you if they're needing bookkeeping services?
Yeah, so you can go to the Landscaping Bookkeeper .com. Sorry, my computer was acting up. You can go to landscapingbookkeeper.com and schedule a 15-minute phone call with us. And what we're going to do there is just see if you're a good, if we can help you, whatever your unique situation is, because we don't want to accept people that, we don't necessarily can help. We can't help what they got going on, because each business has different problems. So there's certain things that we offer, certain things that we don't offer. We just want to make sure that we're offering you the right thing. I don't want to waste anybody's time. And then, we want to make sure that we just want to accept people that we can help is basically what I'm saying. So from there, you'll do a 1-hour consultation with us, and we'll gather your information, like your assets, your transactions, that sort of thing. And we'll send you a proposal from there. So it's a 2-step process. It's a 15-minute phone call, and then it's a 1-hour consultation via video. So,
well, I appreciate your solid advice today, and I'm sure our listeners found value